Now there are times when your image just comes out a little dark and lacking in contrast, a bit like this one here. So how can we improve this? So let's start with the levels adjustment by clicking levels in the adjustments column in the Quick Edit workspace. Here I have separate control over the highlights, the midtones and the shadows of the image. Now I'm going to start by adjusting the shadow areas, so I'm going to click on the Shadows tab. Now I can use the preview thumbnails or I can use the slider to make this adjustment. I'll try the thumbnails. Now this thumbnail here that's got the little bendy arrow on it, the backward facing arrow, that's the default value. So if you ever want to get back to the default values, you just click on that. Now I'll just hover over and find a place that I think looks good. I'm probably plumping for about there. I can see a little bit more detail in the shadows, so I'm going to click on that. I'll now try the midtones. Here you see the central thumbnail now is the one with the white arrow. This is the default value. Now if I move to the left and hover, you'll see that the image starts to look a little bit strange, and this is because we're now going into low contrast country and it really flattens the image out. If I go to the right of that central thumbnail, I actually start to see some contrast and pop appearing in the image, and I'm going to settle for maybe somewhere there, and I'm going to click on that. I've now got a more contrasty look. And now I'll go to the highlights. Click on the highlights tab. And this time I'll use the slider. And I'll just move the slider over to the right. And in doing that, I'm darkening down those highlights. And you can see if I go too far, you can see the effect it has on that sky. It really pulls down those sky tones. But I'm going to put it probably somewhere about there. Okay, so now I've adjusted the shadows, the midtones and the highlights separately. And it's better, but overall it still seems a little bit dark. So let's try the exposure panel to see if we can give it a little bit of a lift. So I'll close down levels by just clicking on it, and I'll open up the exposure panel. Now I'll use the slider again, and I'll just click and drag the slider to the right just to lighten up this image globally. If I go too far, you'll see it'll very quickly blow out that sky. It's a very aggressive adjustment, but it can be very effective in small doses. So if I just move that a little bit, it really gives that image a little bit of a pop. And I'll settle for about there. Now when making tonal adjustments like this, it can be difficult to see how far you've come. Now a good way to see this is to compare it with the original. So let's do that. So I'm going to go up to the view options and I'm going to select before and after horizontal. Now if you're a bit short of space, you want a little bit more space, you can collapse the adjustments panel by just clicking on the adjustments icon, and that gives you a little bit more room to be able to look at your images. So here you can see the original here on the left. It's a bit dark and a bit dull, and on the right I think we've made a significant improvement. It's got more contrast and brightness, and we can see a lot more detail in them shadows. So you can see there's a lot you can do very quickly using levels adjustment or an exposure adjustment to correct tonal values in the Quick Edit workspace.